You may not have heard my request that you go ahead and mute yourselves. And if you have any questions, there is a Q&A panel on the right. Just go ahead, chat those in, and one of the panelists will either stop and pause and we'll address those, or wait to the end, one way or the other. I'll be presenting today with two other individuals. One of those individuals is David Meraki. He is a sales specialist with the public sector with Cisco Meraki. And then also Jeffrey Myers. Jeffrey Myers is the CIO of Bay State College. He's also a firefighter, EMT, part of the COVID response group for Bay State College. And ultimately, he's been responsible for how and when the college reopens. So certainly thankful for having him here today. So go on to the next slide, please. This is going to be our basic flow, and our general flow will be to discuss the Meraki BLE-MR access point solution, the contact tracing solution, and then move on to the MV solution, which is the Meraki video surveillance solution that focuses around spatial distancing. Again, if you have any questions, hit the Q&A panel, but we're going to touch on all of these items as we go through here today, and it's meant to be relatively interactive. So if you go ahead to that next slide, please. So at some point over the last 6 months or in the next couple months, you will be answering or addressing the possibility of implementing possibly every one of these solutions. Everything from trying to determine whether or not someone has a temperature, elevated temperature as they're walking in the door, to contact tracing, right down the line, making sure that people wear masks, making sure that everything is being tracked. And there are multiple ways to do this. And individually, any one of them would carry risk. And we're not proposing that either the MV solution or the BLE tracking solution individually could address or mitigate risk across the boards. But at some point, each one of these is going to work together to help. And as people are looking at different solutions, there are definitely inherent shortcomings and risks to every possible solution. And you hear a lot about, well, why don't we just go ahead and throw an app on a phone? And of course, there are some of the obvious concerns that come into play. For instance, does someone remember their phone? Is it charged? Things of this nature. But then there are unforeseen shortcomings to some of these solutions, things that may pop up because of the manufacturer. For instance, iOS devices now have randomization, which makes it, for privacy purposes, that makes it harder to track where the phone is. So it's both MAC randomization, but also wireless randomization on the phones themselves, something that was not foreseen 6 months ago when some of these solutions started to be put in place. And with that, I'm going to pause for a moment and ask Jeffrey Myers. Jeffrey, what are some of the challenges that you saw as you were starting to look at opening the school safely?
Sorry, I don't think I was muted. Nick, I'll just restart. I said thank you for inviting me on this call. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the partnership we've had. Bay State College is located in Boston. So we're a small school. We don't do large lecture classes. And our student body and that experience of the students interacting with each other is sort of the core of what Bay State offers. And so when this all kind of occurred in March and we had to make the decision to kick our students off campus, remote instruction, that was a big decision for us. And personally, the challenges from us is, we have a lot of different programs at the school, but we also have a very strong nursing and PA component. And so, the heart of this whole COVID situation is hospitals, nursing, healthcare. We're trying to get nurses back in the field, and we can't graduate them unless we can actually have them on campus and working with us. And, Nick mentioned I'm a firefighter, EMT, and, just the rules of probability. When we went remote in March, we immediately focused on how we were going to come back in the fall. But we knew that we're not immune to this. Bay State's like any other school. We're going to have somebody come to campus that's going to get COVID. And we were concerned about one patient coming onto our campus, that coming to our attention, and we have to shut down our entire campus. So imagine the scenario, you go through all the motions of opening your school. 2 weeks later, you have to close your school. And so we immediately started looking for solutions that would help us narrow that down, sort of reduce the risk, the impact, so that in this situation that somebody comes on campus, it's not as large of an impact on the school.
Thanks for that. So going on to the next slide, Chris, as some of you know, I was with Meraki for several years in terms of being a specialist myself. And I do feel like I'm in a good position to speak to the Meraki access points and sort of why Meraki may fit into this solution well. And you know, if you take a look at a Meraki AP, and the primary purpose, of course, is just to offer wireless, there are several radios. Some of those are RF-based radios. And each Meraki access point has one BLE radio, which is generally used for asset tracking. And if you were to say, well, why Meraki? Why not X, Y, and Z solution? It's true that most manufacturers do offer APs that also have BLE radios. The key difference with Meraki is that it's cloud managed. There's a dashboard, and most importantly, the APIs that are inherent in the system allow for the passage of data to other systems, so that data, whatever that may be, can be passed to other systems for analytical purposes. If you could go on to the next slide, Chris, I'm going to go ahead and let Jeffrey describe sort of how they came to this solution and sort of what the different components are.
Thanks, Nick. So I'm going to backtrack just a drop. Two key points. There were a lot of different solutions that we looked at. You've heard in the news about testing. That's not something that would work for a school our size. I mean, just the expense, what's involved. And we have a commuter school, so we have kids coming in and out every single day. Second is phones. So you've heard a lot of the countries trying to get an app that works, notices who you're in connection with. The issue for us with that was, number one, that's not our data. So as the CIO of the organization, sort of feeling a responsibility to have a little bit more control in this, that was out of my control. And then second, even if you have a community that's fully on board, ready to participate in that, that's their phone. It could die. It could need it for a different reason. You know, they may have to get a ride later in the day and their phone battery didn't charge overnight. So they have to turn that off. You lose the contact tracing. So that was some of the limitations for us. And so as we were trying to devise a solution, I was thinking, I'm going to have to explain this to our community. And so complexity was a concern of mine. Privacy was a concern of mine. And so what we ended up, if I kind of fast forward to the end of the solution, we always had our students have badges to get in the building, and they're RFID badges. And so our solution that we put in place, the only thing that changed is we issued them a new BLE badge to hold that ID. We gave them a nice Bay State custom lanyard, and we said to them, because of COVID, we have to make an ask of you. Moving forward, you must at all times wear your ID around your neck. That was the extent of the change management with our end users. So the same badge they had to bring to campus every single day, now they just had to wear it on their neck. So the way this works is the badge that we issued them is a BLE badge. And so that's emitting a ping. It can emit it every few seconds. We have scaled ours back for battery life. And so every 20 seconds, our badges are emitting a Bluetooth ping. It's wherever they're on campus. The wireless system, the Meraki wireless system that we put in, obviously has those BLE antennas that listen. And so it's taking that data in and processing it. Normally, you sort of have to change your thinking a little bit for this solution. Generally, when we do a wireless deployment, we're sort of looking for maximum coverage to each AP, sort of maximizing your return on investment. In this case, you have to think GPS triangulation. And so we need to use the Meraki APs to help us figure out the coordinates of where people are in the building. And Cisco and Meraki have done a great job with their product to help with this. So there's a lot going on when they get that data from our badges. And the Cisco APs are actually doing a lot of processing to figure out which of the 3 APs that are listening to this the closest. They're sort of averaging some information they're getting, and then they're feeding that out through an API to us. And so when we did a count the one time, we are getting a day about 300,000 lines of code. And that is just filtered to our individuals at Bay State. We then take all that information and we dump that into a SQL database. And then after the SQL database, since nobody really wants to go through a couple 100,000 lines of code by hand, we're using reporting solutions to filter on individuals. So the use case would be we would find an individual came on campus, they tested positive, and that name would be provided to us. And then we have the ability to see who was around that individual at the same time and place and assess duration, which is part of your assessment if something is a contact. And then from that, we can produce a report to say these are the individuals that were exposed and that should be quarantined.
Great.
And so just one thing, Nick, not to cut you off, I'm sorry. So the picture that you're looking at on this PowerPoint, you're actually seeing two individuals. So I filtered this down just to two. And you can sort of see the individual of the green. They're generally separated from the individual that's in the purple. But there is one contact in the middle. And there's, this is not per ping that you're seeing. There's some averaging going on here in this visual. But there is a point in this open area of concern because the individuals were together. So then what the reporting allows us to do, and I didn't want to put the data up, but I did check, those two overlays actually occurred at different times. And so with our reporting, even though they were in the same place, they were not in the same place and time. One individual was in an office at another part of the building, while the purple was in that open space. So in this scenario that you're looking at, there actually was no contacts that we'd be concerned about for quarantining.
All right. Thank you, Chris. If you go to the next slide, I just want to ask some questions that I think others would have, whether it's a campus environment or a workplace environment. Jeffrey, you were talking about challenges earlier in terms of the reopening decisions that had to be made. Is there anything else you'd add in terms of just balancing, the safety concerns with privacy? Anything we might have missed along the way there?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. Thank you, Nick. I guess there's two things. Number one, this solution is part of a layered solution. So if you think your IT defense systems, none of us rely on one set of protections. So you don't put a firewall in place and then you're good. So this solution is put into place with social distancing, with wearing masks. We've reduced the occupancy of our buildings. And that overall solution is how this works. So the privacy was an issue from the very start. And the whole thing was sort of designed around that concept. What we did is the badges that people wear around, they are anonymized, essentially. They are spitting out a generic MAC ID address. We did get some questions from people on, hey, if I walk down the streets of Boston, can people track us? The technical answer for that is, you walk into a Nordstrom's or some department store, they can see that ping, but it means nothing to them. There's no identifiable information at all on that ping. We can only, quote, identify that individual on the back end. When we go to pull that report, we're combining the information. We're then identifying who those individuals are in the back end. And so then we put some business process around this. All the data gets destroyed after 14 days. It's just not of value to us. We don't want it sitting around. Also, we have set very strict business process rules on who can access this, which is only my team in IT, and what is the purpose of the data. And the only purpose we will use this for is from a contact tracing perspective. So for any reason somebody, wanted to say, hey, was so-and-so on campus today for some reason, we won't use the system for that purpose.
In addition to being able to do contact tracing with the badges, I mean, what are there some other, you were able to show how the badges went within the floor plan itself, the time that was spent, but were there any other benefits of putting this in place from a compliance perspective?
Yeah, there was actually two. One is Boston's been a very proactive city as far as working with the city to keep it safe. And with that comes a lot of rules and regulations. So we are very strictly controlled on how many people we can have on our floor. Essentially every single individual walking on our floor, including guests, has a badge. And so we did create a dashboard that shows within 30-minute increments the number of individuals on our floor. So with both of our campuses, at any point in time, I can just look at that dashboard and I can give the city a number if they would ask. The second thing, which actually has been very helpful, you may have seen, some of the solutions people need for symptom surveys. We have decided to require every single student coming on campus every single day before they enter our buildings to complete a student symptom survey. But the question became around the logistics of how do we actually confirm that a student that came to class completed the survey? Do you have teachers walk around? Do they have to check phones for sort of a green pass? So what we did is we actually tied both systems together. And the minute a student comes on any of our campuses, we can actually check our system to see if they completed a survey. And if they did not, we will immediately email themselves as a reminder and say, hey, you need to do this. And then after a period of 10 minutes, if we still don't have a survey from them, it'll actually notify our dean. And then our dean can step in to make sure that the individual is not on our campus, or that they complete the survey, or in the unfortunate event, we have to ask them to leave.
Got it. And how about the sort of the solution as a whole? I mean, especially from students, has there been a lot of eye rolling as to, oh my gosh, like we have to put this badge on, we're being tracked, things like that, or people have been generally pretty open?
I think the best way to describe it is early on and we were very open. We wrote an article, we explained to the students what was going on. I think there are a couple eyebrows raised at first, and then they sort of thought about it. And they realized, you know what, if this is the trade-off to keep us safe, then it's an acceptable trade-off. What the feedback we have gotten is the students completely understand why we're doing this. And then it's also, behind many of our students, not all of our students, are concerned parents. Their children are going to Boston, they're going to school, what are we doing to protect them? And some of these students are obviously returning to households that, maybe have grandparents with them. And so I think the community as a whole appreciates that we've done something with privacy in mind that is in the best interest of keeping our community safe and still allowing that interaction without keeping everybody separated off campus.
Thank you. There are some Q&A, some questions coming in. I think we're going to wait to the end to address those. And with that, we're going to hand this over to David.
All right, great. Yeah, my name is David. I'm with Cisco Meraki, and I'm just going to give a couple of updates on some other areas that we provide for our customers to safely reopen and kind of help get through all the changes that are occurring now and potentially in the future. And with that said, we have another solution that we offer in the form of a visual aspect, a visual kind of tracking method, if you will. Jeffrey and his team, along with Aspire, built a phenomenal solution around contact tracing. But I'm going to highlight the Meraki MV, or the Meraki Camera. And in this slide, you're able to see kind of a snapshot of how we're able to accommodate additional efforts to protect staff and faculty, students, and anyone else that's on campus or in a building. And we do that by utilizing the visual data that's captured in the Meraki Camera. So as an example, what we're able to do is check the number of people that are in a certain space at any given time, whether it's real time or a specified time, right? If there's a capacity limit of 10 individuals in a particular room, we're able to capture that number and send alerts when that number is exceeded, or go back and look at historical data to see if that capacity limitation was violated. So with that said, the Meraki product portfolio actually has an open API across the various products, and it's no different here with the camera. And we're able to offload that data into a data analytics type of solution so that you can have more granular data and outcomes at your fingertips. And this includes having something such as a real-time live stream feed that you can send into a video analytics solution, whether Aspire creates it, whether you create it such as Jeffrey did, along with the Aspire team, or you utilize something from our API ecosystem partners. Now with real-time streaming, you're able to have an overlay of data analytics, meaning someone can write the code to detect if somebody's wearing a mask or not in a given area, for example. But natively, the camera does detect people. We do object detection, and there's also a great deal of machine learning that's also available, and it's all done right on that individual camera. Another aspect of the data collection is actually allowing safety teams to really understand what that space looks like. Do we have the space organized in a way that is safe for everybody that's in that given area? Meaning, in this slide, you can see that maybe the tables might be too close to each other, or you can identify a hotspot within a given area because of the way we do heat mapping along with people detection. Right, and so that gives you the opportunity to say, okay, let's take a step back and make sure that we really have this area organized in a way that disperses the individuals in the room to help maintain a safe distance from each other. And this API capability can also be packaged with contact tracing so that you can sync the two timestamps together and have a visual representation along with the Bluetooth data tracking as well. So we can go on to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit more about another solution that is offered to help with both the safe reopenings and also in the event of any type of emergency. We're all familiar with these street signs. We don't always see that work is canceled as we're driving into the office, but in this scenario, what we're doing with these mobile signs is we've packaged together a solution that allows for customers to have mobile Wi-Fi hotspots. And in this picture, you'll see that we have the Meraki Gateway, which is an LTE solution packaged with a Meraki firewall, and finally with an outdoor access point. And this is all managed in the same dashboard that you would find on your campus or in your workspace or on your network. The key item here is that this is a mobile solution. So the work sign, or this construction sign, if you will, is towed around the town, or you can put it in your parking lot of the campus and provide a safe outdoor Wi-Fi space while also being able to manage it in a single dashboard. This is good for, safe reopenings where students can sit in a parking lot, for example, and have high-speed connectivity, but also in the event of a natural disaster, or if, which is all too common, somebody cuts the fiber because they dug a trench a little too deep. But we do offer a secondary solution to help in these times now.
Go on to that next slide. So just a quick note about us for those of you who haven't worked with Aspire, who we are. We're a tech integrator. We've been around for 16 years, and I had personally, when I worked at Cisco, worked with about 100 different Cisco resellers. Aspire was at the very top of the list in terms of companies that had the most capable engineers in terms of implementation, complex design. And if you take a look at our team in the Northeast, it's comprised largely of ex-Cisco specialists and experts in their own architectures. This isn't meant to be an advertisement for Aspire, just the way in which we engage. And if you go on to that next slide, Chris, I'd like to pause for a minute and address a few of the questions that have come in. And Jeffrey, I'm going to turn it back to you. The ones that come to mind for me so far, not for me, but that have come in, and there was a gentleman named Chris who had asked, I believe, both of these. One is, what is the life expectancy of the card? That's one. And secondly, is that card that's being used for tracking, that BLE beacon card, can it be used for other purposes too, within a campus, building access, dining, printing, things of that nature?
Chris, great questions. The first question on life expectancy, you and I have to touch base every couple of years here to check. Our expectancy is around 3 years. We'll call it 2 to 3 to be safe, but around 3 years. It obviously depends on how often you're setting up that device to ping. And then there are multiple different devices you can select to do this. Some of them do not have removable batteries, some do. Some have switches you can turn on and off to help save battery life. So when our faculty, staff, students take these home at night, they're still pinging. We could have implemented a solution that has a power button, but then you're relying on the individual to turn it on and leave it on. So in the interest of COVID and erring on the safe side, we went with one that pings at all times. We reduced the rate, hoping for best battery life, and time will tell. Your second question is exceptionally good question. Right now, because of how quickly we implemented this, the Bluetooth part of this has no other functionality other than our wireless tracking for contact tracing. The ID card that we combine with this is an RFID, which is currently how they get in our building. We would like to switch our building access to Bluetooth. One, it's sort of the way most of your newer systems coming out of the market are going. Two, you have the value of they can use their phone if you allow it at a time when we are not in the middle of a pandemic. Third value of that is, let's fast forward 2 years from now, 3 years from now. If I'm not sure if that battery is going to die, I know that they got in the building with that Bluetooth. They authenticated at the door with Bluetooth, and I can be reasonably assured then it's going to, at least last for the next 6 hours while they're on campus. Once you go beyond that, you can obviously tie it into your other systems on campus. Again, it's something we're looking at. We're looking at printers right now. How do we switch our printers from the RFID to Bluetooth? There are readers out there. We don't have it yet.
Thank you. One more question. In addition to contact tracing, we're just talking about some of the other benefits. Was there a noted value to campus security so you have awareness in the event that there's an active shooter or a facilities emergency? And was it useful in approval or funding? And I guess as a side note, I happen to know that your access points were starting to get a little bit older, so that was certainly, I think, a motivational reason to move forth. And I think it will be for other organizations that are on the cusp of needing a refresh. But again, this question is about campus security in emergency situations.
I appreciate the question. As an EMT, obviously emergency management's huge in our world. Many of us are trained in active shooting drills, and so when I walk on campus, it comes to mind. You know where people are. I mean, there's definitely an operational coordination that would need to come into play here. If you have an emergency situation, it's gonna unravel itself very quickly, and so there would definitely have to be some thought on how then you quickly can get information on what's going on in your campus and relay that to the emergency police personnel coming in to deal with that crisis. That would be an interesting thing to think through. How quickly can those two things align to change the strategy that the police would use in responding to that? I will say that the company we went with, they actually have a badge that has a emergency beacon. So we did not enable that part of our solution. We're doing a lot of things ourselves with the API, but I know that there's third parties that you could integrate into this, and their badges can actually have a panic button, and that panic button would then immediately notify somebody of where they're at. Obviously, can't really tell what's going on, but I think the combination of the two solutions could work well together.
Okay. I'd forgotten about the emergency beacon on those particular cards. Definitely interesting. If we could go ahead and unmute the lines, just in case someone hasn't chatted a question in to the Q&A panel, and anyone can ask if there are any questions that remain unanswered and someone just wanted to ask outright verbally.
While people are thinking about a question, I can elaborate on that last question as far as justifying this solution. One thing that came to mind early on is the hospitals have done a similar concept for a while, but the difference is that hospital is being built with infrastructure baked into every room, every wall, every piece of equipment. So for a college, we all hope this COVID situation ends sooner than later. And I'm hoping, that we never have a need for that infrastructure. So at the end of the day, as Nick mentioned, I do have in place a very good wireless system with Meraki. So part of the, yes, we spent a little bit more money to address the COVID tracing part of this, but then the justification for it is I'm getting a good infrastructure as part of the solution.
And Nick, this is Chris. I had asked the question about the emergency facilities because I think one of the things that has come up over time but hard to justify is that emergency management investment. So if in fact there were an active shooter and you could tell that all of the students and faculty are kind of in the north corner, where to tell police to come enter the building or where potentially the shooter could be. But it's been very hard to the needs there. That's hard to justify the expense. That's why I was wondering if this would be an applicable solution for that as well, and basically kind of look at two budgets to handle the same thing, one COVID related and one EMS related.
Yeah, my answer was kind of cautious, Chris, just because obviously I understand how quickly things play out in that coordination. But one of the important factors for police is how many people are still in the building, and sort of where are they, and how to mitigate that risk and assist as many people as possible. So I really appreciate the line of thinking around this for that.
Good question. And just a quick note, if anyone is interested in taking a deeper dive into the solution or seeing what would be necessary, whether you don't have Meraki or if you already have Meraki, to see if the existing infrastructure would be sufficient, we can do an assessment. I think there are a lot of organizations that wouldn't even want to necessarily take this on from a management perspective. And if that's the case, we can explore that possibility. Aspire does have a 24/7 knock, and take a look at options in terms of helping us manage your wireless and also potentially manage the analysis of this system as well. With that, I thank you all for attending, and look forward to talking with many of you in the weeks ahead.